Good morning, everyone. We are blessed to be here, as always, with the amazing Double B, Blaine Bartlett, BlaineBartlett.com, my mentor for so many years. People ask me, wow, everything's growing so quickly. It seems so easy. What's the difference? And I said, well, it's great mentorship and having a mentor like Blaine Bartlett to help me identify how I've been limiting myself, my own self-image, moving possibilities into reality for me. Let him do it for you. Blaine, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, my pleasure, as always. Good to get out of bed in the morning.
Well, we're up early, but for Reggie James, it's probably in the afternoon. He's already ready to have some tea. Founder of Digital Clarity.
Exactly. That's right. It's great the perception everyone on the other side of the pond has of the UK, expecting us all to be wandering around with bowler hats and swinging an umbrella around. It's that
exactly.
kind of.
This is Steve.
It's great. It's great. I love it.
I can't wait to get back to London as well. We have a few speaking engagements scheduled there, but B2B marketing isn't talked about as much as the individuals today, what other people call the influencers. For the real players in the space, I call them influencers, putting people in the flow. Blaine and I's focus is primarily in the B2B side of things, a larger enterprise perspective of understanding marketing itself, other than individual brands. My first question is, in understanding as a strategist and a leader in the space, how has the personal brand of, for example, the executives or other influencers impacted your B2B digital marketing strategy?
That is a great question, David. And I think the lines have blurred incredibly over the last sort of, certainly post-pandemic, if I can use that terminology. But it's become less B2C or B2B. It's very much human to human, and it's always been that way, but there's been less emphasis on it. So we as a business look at what makes people buy, what makes people looking not just at data, but a whole host of different things, all these different components. And really, that's a great question to kick off with, because that is one of the biggest changes we have seen is the CEO of an organization, any medium to large organization, coming from behind the desk and being if I can use the term, a key person of influence. They have to be the face of their brand, of their organization as a leader. And when we normally advise CEOs, CMOs, and more recently, chief revenue officers, sometimes to get out of their own way in many ways, and really try and help them. Marketing is almost a byproduct of understanding what they do, but it's also all about understanding a little bit about who they are and how that's reflected in everything. But no, in answer to your question, David, it is one of the biggest areas, and it's the biggest challenges, is to try and get people in the B2B, certainly in our space, in the tech space, who are looking to scale, to become far more audible and visual in terms of what they do. So that's one of the components that we help them with.
You know, Reggie, I like where this thread is going. I'm working with a CEO right now that is actually facing this exact issue. How does he become the face of the organization? And more specifically, not the organization, but the product, the service offering, so that he becomes kind of more an industry icon. Would be my word for it here. And he's not naturally inclined to seek publicity for the sake of what he would call in his own mind publicity. Why would I want to be known? I mean, let's just go get our product out there.
Yeah.
How would you work with it? And what's the narrative that you actually will bring to your clients such that they can get over that little speed bump, if you will?
Again, it's all part of that mix, and there's never ever one straight line of publicity. There are very deep. You can go deep and wide, and have a very. So there is a narrative where you have a CEO or a leader who is very knowledgeable about the product. They may not be as dynamic as David or yourself, getting in front of crowds or getting in front, but they have something to offer. And we normally start those people on before they even get to that point. We have a plan that we work with them on, but it's understanding. We always try and meet people where they are, and if they are on their journey. Somewhere where they're looking to break through, or not even looking to break through, but know that they may have to do this to help and build their organization to get to a certain level, or under pressure from shareholders to do this, or whatever it may be. We deconstruct where they are as much as we can, and help them define the best way to actually approach that. So it's part of our discovery piece that we do. We call it a diagnosis workshop, where we get all the key stakeholders in there and try and understand their business first, and where they fit into that business and what they actually do. And you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, if you get 5 executives in a room and ask them all to write down what it is they actually do as an organization and turn the paper around, they're all different.
Yeah.
So we all have different perceptions of what the business does, but also a perception of how we come across. So we help, not necessarily help them find their voice, their true voice, but try and understand who they are and what's the best way to fit in. The key word for me is, which you guys have an abundance of, is, and it was Merriam-Webster's word of 2023, is authenticity, being authentic. And there's no point, in answer to your question, Blaine, the person who's has resistance to do something, we have to find the flow of where they're going to find something that fits with them and develop that, because that is an equally strong building block in terms of what people engage with, as long as it's real, and people will buy into that a hell of a lot more.
Spot on. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to finish up with the last question, obviously the authenticity and the essence is a key in the discovery process in any digital marketing strategy. But you mentioned another key word, which was not Merriam-Webster's word of the year, but it should be the word of the year for so many people, because it's resistance. And I was in the early adopter phases of the internet, of the middle space, of transcoding the internet into the data side of the internet, all through my first 15 years of my career before I was blessed to work for Lee Steinberg. Talk about resistance. And then it mirrored itself again now with digital marketing. I still see mid-market and large companies resistant to, you know, the idea of digital marketing compared to traditional marketing, the same way people like Justice Scalia telling me the internet will never be used for research, that you need books. That's the type of resistance we faced in 1992. I see the same resistance from Fortune 500 CEOs that I coach, and they're like, "Well, I can't do, you know, the company can't do what you do, Dave. You know, you're you know, very nimble. You're a personality." Whatever excuses they give, it's a necessity. How much resistance are you receiving today? I know it's less, but are you still seeing a lot of resistance in the B2B side of the digital marketing strategy?
100%. I mean, the resistance is real. And as we all know, that part of that resistance is more an internal thing rather than anything else. So resistance to themselves, because they've never done it before. And there's also the other word, the F word, fear, in terms of that particular F word, though it could relate to both, but it's kind of one of those things where there's that thing. We always feel that the strength of resistance, it goes to Isaac Newton's almost second law of forces. They're equal. There's an equal force resisting as there is pulling, if you like. So there is if you can find a way of understanding that piece and actually getting deeper into that individual or a group, and actually where that resistance is, you'll find that the inertia is equally strong to do something if you can unlock those areas that actually find that path. And I think that's one of the roles of a market. We see ourselves as we're an advisor, we work in a very commoditized space. Our approach is totally counterintuitive to the way most marketers approach business. They always go for product first, or get yourself onto LinkedIn, in the B2B space. We're very counterintuitive in the sense that you have to do things differently. And we're always talking about, in terms of resistance, there's a time period that takes time, for people to develop, especially leaders, because they've got years of stuff that's been poured into their head. It's great to see David nodding there, because he's obviously an expert at this. But what we find is that that resistance comes from a very internal piece, but also it takes time for it to develop. Everyone wants the six-pack, but they're not always willing to do the work. They're not going to get up at 6 a.m. They're not going to do the run. They're not going to do this, 8 hours sleep, change the nutrition. They want the results, but are they willing? Our program is very much a doing program, and people get far more fulfillment on it. There is no magic bullet. You need the war wounds. Yeah.
I was going to say, there's very few guys over 70. There's only one in this group, but there's very few guys over 70 that are going to wake up at 5 a.m. to do a show. And be consistent. We're on shows 610, and people are of this one show, and it's interesting because they're just not willing to do it. And for me, and we know the strategy, and the numbers are huge when you get to the bigger companies. I just think it's funny because as much as it used to frustrate me, the resistance with the bigger companies, now I love it, because every day they resist, it's more time for me to cannibalize all the billions of dollars they've spent on marketing and cannibalize it into my social silo, because I am willing to wake up every day and make sure that I'm pouring into the community. And my community I've never had the ability to build a community like we did. And it's just amazing. The traditional stuff faces you. Then I had Dean Cook, the famous comedian. We're touring together. My kids are like, "Dad, how the hell are you going on tour with Dane Cook? At the U2 Theater and Carnegie Hall?" And I said, because I cannibalized, all the big companies' audiences because they're still resisting the fact that wake up and pour into your community, and a portion of them will respond. Anyway, Reggie, we'll have you back. Let's make sure when I come over the pond that we have some tea over at Mayfair, and I'll introduce you to some really cool people.
I would love to do that, David. David, it's been an honor to be here on this show. And Blaine, very nice to meet you too.
You as well, Reggie.
Catching up with you in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reggie James. I know what a great guest. I know when people saw me having a guest Reggie James on, they probably thought it was a cornerback for Green Bay. They had no idea the elegance in class. We thought we got another football player. Reggie James is coming on. Nope, it was a different Reggie James. All right. Next up, waiting in the wings, Moshik is here. Temkin, he is out of a fairly notable place, Cambridge, Massachusetts. There's a few educational institutions there in which he's a fellow as well. The Tulane of the North, I think, is over there. Two of my siblings graduated from Cambridge. We Moshik. We're Luca. No need to be offended, Harvard. Well. All right, he's back. He's back.
He's back.
All right, welcome, Moshik. There we go.
Thank you. I made myself disappear magically, but I'm back.
Yeah, that was cool. Well, we were very excited about your new book, Warriors, Rebels, and Saints. And it's, to me, so important because you take a historical analysis. Hold it up because it's going to be seen there. We take a historical analysis of leadership. And it's an area that Blaine and I spend a lot of time helping people understand. And why I love your book so much and why I encourage people to read it is not because of your hyper intelligence, which is obvious. It's because that when we study history, especially of leadership, human nature never changes. So from Machiavelli to Malcolm X, what your book is a lesson in for me is the human nature of leadership. And so I love to hear from an expert in a hyper intellect as yourself, what are some of the common denominators that you learned about human nature writing the book?
Well, thank you, David, for that very nice, warm introduction. I fear you're setting your listeners and viewers up for a bitter disappointment. First, no. I also am not a cornerback for the Green Bay Packers, so just in case anybody was under that impression. So that's already the second. I don't know about my intellect, but I really do appreciate. No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I got to interrupt you because everyone write this down. I heard the best quote last night. I was doing a VIP dinner in Atlanta, a bunch of Tiger 21 guys, big investors, and it was, you're either humble or you're about to be.
Yes, well, I'm humble and about to be even more humble. So I appreciate the kind words about the book, and thank you for having me, Blaine. Thanks for being here, and nice to meet you. So basically let me sign on to what you just said. The whole premise of what I do is the book itself is a product of many years of teaching the subject of leaders and leadership in history. You obviously leadership is a very important topic to people, and it's in the the corporate world, the political world, the public world, what have you. And it's often sort of focuses on successful people. There's a lot of insights from management, from psychology, and other forms, but not the way that what I could contribute is to really look at cases from history and see what lessons they can provide. And my conclusion from the years of teaching this at Harvard, other places, is similar to what you said, is that not just human nature doesn't change, but the people in the past are like us, and we are like the people in the past. It's just we're alive now because of an accident of birth. We're not superior to our ancestors, and we're not inferior to our heirs. The fact of the matter is that we're a species, and people just like us face challenges and problems in the past. What has changed, the circumstances change, technology changes, the world changes, but essentially we're still sort of facing the same sorts of issues of leadership, challenges that we have living together, getting along in this world, managing resources, trying to live good, healthy, prosperous lives. Those are things that are perennial. It's not just in our lifetime. It's not in the past. I also predict that it will be the case in the future. So when I write a book about history, leadership in history, I try to emphasize to everybody, this is not about the past, not just dead people. It's really about us, right? Trying to understand our own mindset in these situations in the past.
Moshik, I'm fascinated by this topic. I've taught leadership around the world as well as you have, for almost 4 decades now. I was lecturing at Tsinghua University a number of years ago on enterprise leadership, which was, and I know that you've spoken there as well. I think you're visiting professor there. The idea that if we don't learn history, history will repeat itself, I think is a fallacy. I think it's, if we learn people, it's people that repeat. It's not history. History's the consequence of people repeating.
I couldn't agree more. You're touching on something, Blaine. You're touching on something that's so important. So let me try to dig into that a little bit.
Please.
There's a temptation out there that we are, that things happen because of some, I don't know. It's like principle. A lot of my colleagues, I have to say, in academia, I have to explain to them the real world doesn't operate according to your academic theories and to your principles. And when I say we, I mean the royal we. We are the ones who make this world. I know that sounds very banal, but we have to be reminded of that, right? The world that we live in today is the product of decisions that we've taken as human beings, right? As leaders, as societies, right? Nothing is dictated. There's no meta historical principles that decide, how we live. So we're not condemned to repeat things. History doesn't just repeat itself. If things happen in a similar way, it's because people decided to not learn from the past, or they drew the wrong lessons. I think that the past is there for us to learn from, to make the world better, to make our lives better for our communities, our families, our the world around us, and ourselves, hopefully. But there's no, the for better or worse, the conditions that we have are man-made, as it were, right? We have created our own problems. That's how I see it, and we are the ones who can bring about the solutions. No one else.
Lastly, the book also deals with leadership in the context of desperate times, of dark times, and the transcendent leaders that are created through those more difficult challenges. Yeah. Today, because of social silos and extreme awareness and communication capabilities that did not exist when Machiavelli was alive, which is always, to me, extraordinarily amazing when Shakespeare said, "The whole world is your stage," how he knew, because it wasn't the same as today where the whole world is actually your stage. Do you think that because there's now an awareness to desperate times at all times, that it's not an isolated incident that's publicized or propagandized like the Holocaust or other evil times, but now we are aware of all these social silos of desperate times, even if we're so far removed that 2,000 years ago we would be aware of the fact that something was going on in the Middle East. We lived in the continental U.S., whatever it is. How does that impact, looking through your lens, that there's always desperate times now? How's that going to impact the transcendence of leaders? Because there's always that constant of desperate times.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We have a sense, and I think every generation, even when we look back at history, say, "Oh, this was a peaceful time." People don't necessarily live through it that way, right? Just like telling people, "Hey, you guys had it good," and I said, "No, I don't think so." So you have that kind of conversation Thanksgiving, right? But in all seriousness, I think the part of what I try to do in the book, and in fact, I do write about the one case that I go into in some depth, is the Great Depression in the United States. So, from experience, the further away we move from an event in time, the more you sort of have to talk about the history to get people to realize just how bad that was. The Great Depression, an economic crisis. No, you have a whole society that is really crumbling. And the world is going bonkers, right? That's the rise of fascism, communism, and then leading up to World War II. So it all starts in the US. So in that moment of crisis, what kind of leadership is around? How do people navigate through it, and who steps up? So you have that transition from President Hoover to President Roosevelt, which I think is a really interesting one. We see that some leaders are, I think, more suited for times of stability, peacetime. And that was Herbert Hoover. He was a great manager. He was someone who had this ability to kind of, just keep the ship afloat in a steady time. And he was very popular as long as things were stable. But when crisis hit, turns out that there's a different kind of leadership that becomes, appealing to people. And that was basically, FDR's leadership, right? FDR in his he had 4 terms. He died at the beginning of his 4th term. It was a constant crisis, the Great Depression, World War II. But that's the sort of president or leader who thrived in a moment of crisis. So I think to make that parallel, part of my goal is to get people, the readers, to identify what in our world really is in the crisis mode. right? And what is the sort of leadership that is needed when we are really facing an acute crisis? And I don't mean just, putting out a fire here and there. I mean when you feel that society is in danger of disintegration and collapse. And there's a lot of talk in the US, especially politically nowadays, about what's going to happen with our democracy, and what's going to happen with our economy, and the people are in their bubbles, and so on and so forth. So it's important for us to be able to recognize in history who are the leaders who did well in those situations, who were able to kind of bring people together, work for the public good, and who are the leaders. We see it, in that period around the world, the Hitlers, the Mussolinis, the others, the ones who exploit these problems to be divisive, to be very scapegoating, and so on. So I think that this is just one example, David, to your point, of how we can learn from history, not just about the past, but about our own world.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a beautiful book. Give us perspective.
Thank you.
That perspective of the past allows us to give a meaning to our future, aligned with where we want to be or better. Warriors, Rebels, and Saints, The Art of Leadership from Machiavelli to Malcolm X, a great way to learn about self and to create a better future for us all, so we can look back and forward and say, man, we had a good. We do have a good when we have great authors with hyper-intelligence and humility of Moshik, Temkin. We look forward to having you on more shows, my friend. Thank you for writing such a powerful book. It has helped to give me perspective. It's a great leadership book. Thank you.
Next time I'm on, I'll be with the staff of the Green Bay Packers. I guarantee you.
There you go.
All right.
I'll bring you a helmet. I'll bring you a helmet
right.
instead of earphones.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. All right. We're going back over the pond. Thank you for your patience. Heather Delaney has been waiting for us, the founding and managing director of Gallium Ventures. Welcome, Heather.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fantastic. We are bookend by England today, which is beautiful. And so you're perfect person to talk about building an agency on both sides of the pond, and the cultural differences that can actually be leveraged into success. What were some of the key things that you looked at in the appreciation of the differences between the two different cultures that exist on each side of the Atlantic?
I think that's a big question. So I was born in Silicon Valley. I've been in the UK and the US probably an equal amount of time, and having launched companies in both countries, I think it really depends. The admin and the paperwork in the US, my God, is complicated. Where if you're going to launch a company in the UK, so much easier. You just go into company's house. So I think it's, just the sheer amount of work that you have to go through from a US side. You've got the city level, the state level, looking at the country as a whole, far, far more complicated. But then as a business, it really depends on where you're going to work. If, the audience that you're going after. I ended up moving Gallium Ventures from San Francisco to London because we sit between the time zones. Because I was tired of 2 a.m. phone calls and 10 p.m. phone calls and 6 a.m. phone calls. You can only do so many hidden underneath a blanket and say, sorry, my camera is broken. You have to move between the time zones. So in the morning, we're speaking with, Asia and Europe, and then we're the first thing New York wakes up to, first thing San Francisco wakes up to, and then everyone could go home and have dinner and see their family. So, I mean, for me, it was more of a personal level of, if you're going to build a team, build it where they, can have some form of a balance.
A couple of questions come to mind here that I'd like to kind of bundle if I can, Heather. First of all, Gallium. I'm always intrigued by the name of companies. But Gallium, I think on a periodic table is number 31 or something like that. It's heavy metal, not that heavy, but used in to facilitate the production of incredibly bright mirrors. I think that's one of the things that comes into play with this. Why did you use the word gallium for your company? That would be one piece. And then I hope it actually kind of dovetails into the second part of this question, which has to do with something that you've just alluded to here. being able to transact business in different environments that have different cultural mores, not necessarily legal, but cultural mores,
Yeah.
that we need to actually work with. Because the expectations that I have coming from the US, as an example, can really trip me up when I try to set something up in the UK. And we just went through this about a year ago, setting some stuff up with a foundation. It's kind of like, okay, where did that hoop come from?
Yeah, I think Gallium's an interesting one. So I have to admit, I'm a massive nerd, in the best possible way. Like, you know, I love Star Trek. I reference it probably a bit too much in the office. I think it freaks people out at this point. You know, president of the science club when I was younger. Like, I really enjoy it. So for me, Gallium is a way that if somebody kind of approaches me and says, "Oh, that's a really clever, you know, it's used in chips and things like that," I can feel like, "Ah, you're my type of person." So it was just me being a bit weird. Also, you know, I've worked with domain companies in the past. The .com was available. So I mean, when you're deciding on a business name, it's not just plucking something from the air that actually you think is nice. Is the web domain also available at the same time? Because you don't want to go through the whole legal process of naming a company and then find out the domain's gone. And then what do you call it? You know, you're just going to be giving traffic to somebody else. So that's really kind of where Gallium comes from. It's used within the tech industry, which is just a nice link into it. I would say from, you know, an international side of it, again, being American, I understand what it's like, and I've worked with American companies who've moved into Europe. And it's, you know how a culture is and how a business has been built. So you assume that it just naturally, you get a new office and you open the doors and it works, but it's not that way. You know, if you're a company that focuses on localization and getting locals involved and making reviews or anything like that, if all of your imagery is, people in shorts in sunny San Francisco with palm trees, it doesn't come across as a local company anymore. Mm-hmm. So there's ways that brands can localize, like McDonald's. McDonald's, obviously they have their menu, but then they localize it for every single country as well. You can get beer in some places, you can get black hamburgers and the buns are black in Japan and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But at the same side, it's still at the heart, it's still McDonald's. So from, a consumer point of view, there are little tweaks and changes that can be made. But then from a business owner's point of view, you have to honestly consider, is that move the right move? Is it an ego move? I want to move to Spain because it's sunny, so I'm just going to open a Spanish office, but actually the customers aren't there. Or does it make logical sense? Have you done a bit of market research in the past? And actually, this is a country where people are hungry for what my product or service is, in which case you can actually test it through marketing and PR. You can get press coverage for a product before it's available, approach resellers and distributors and say, actually, people are interested in it. You could be the first one to have it exclusively. And that kind of helps guide those conversations. And then it helps you decide as to which company logically makes the most sense to move into from one into the other. And then you start to figure out all of the admin and, lawyers and registering the company and what does that require, and, two different entities, how, all of the fun stuff.
Well, Heather, one of the other advantage that Heather has beyond her extreme experience and worldview is that technology itself has blessed a business that understands the world social silo, being able to address and launch products around the world, to understand that regionalization that the biggest companies in the world need to understand, not only for the internal employees there, but for your clients themselves, to have someone with capability, knowledge, experience of the cultures, distribution, sourcing, all the experts. In fact, one of the small fun facts that we know through that experience, Heather is also a toy expert, a toy judge. So I wish I would have known earlier, because my kids got too old, but I love toys, and I would love to see what criteria they use in the expertise in judging. My kids were cheerleaders, and I never understood what criteria they were using to judge my daughter in cheerleading. I think toy experts are about the same. So it'd be really cool for me, an expert in fun, an expert in culture, an expert in the world economy. Use the best, the founder and managing director at Gallium Ventures. They will be working with you to launch and to stay in business around the world. Heather, promise us you'll come back. We will come and visit you as well. Blaine and I get over there and are just building a great community, including with our charity there in London as well. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I got you guys.
All right.
No, perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
She's amazing. All right, Blaine, the double B, Blaine Bartlett, my mentor, coach, and my teacher. Most importantly, my friend. What do you have as your takeaway for the day?
I'm going to go back to Merriam-Webster. We used 2 words today: authenticity and resistance, and I think they are an interesting juxtapositioning here. If I'm encountering resistance, I've got to show up, and I've got to show up in a way that allows people to connect, and it's through that connection that resistance begins to fade away. It's invitation occurs with authenticity. So how do I create movement as a leader? I become authentic as well as I can. Resistance fades away. We connect through authenticity. We disconnect through certainty and bluster.
I love it. My takeaway is from Shakespeare: the whole world is your stage, and people like Reggie understand the unbelievable size, scope, and scale of opportunity that exists because the whole world is your stage, whether you're an individual brand or a Fortune 500 company. And obviously, Moshik takes that perspective, as we talked about, in a historical analysis of desperate times. So not only is the whole world is your stage in building a brand, but it's also your stage in leadership because of the hyper awareness to good times and bad times at all times. And then Heather, her whole business is based upon locating herself and expertise that the whole world is her stage specific to her subject matter, topic, and expertise of, being able to launch product with marketing, PR, creative, and digital that is hyper regionalized the same way that the multi-billion-dollar companies like McDonald's can have black burgers in Japan and spicy Cajun chicken in New Orleans and so on and so forth. So the takeaway today, you want to have and take advantage of the size, scope, and scale that technology has provided us, of the whole world being your stage, then utilize your own social silo of authenticity and stop resisting all that's been given you. Blaine Bartlett, you've been given me BlaineBartlett.com, making my and moving my possibilities into reality. One of the greatest in the world. I'm blessed to be mentored by Bob Proctor and Blaine Bartlett, and best investment of time that I've ever spent learning from you two gentlemen. And since Bob's not here anymore, I get both in one person with Blaine Bartlett. So if you're interested, make sure you reach out, BlaineBartlett.com. And we appreciate you, brother, waking up early. Not everybody will do that, but Blaine Bartlett will. Say hi to Cynthia. I love you.
I will, and I'll see you next Thursday.
See you next Thursday, my friend. Hopefully before.
Yep.
All right. Well, it is Thursday. We're episode 610 of Digital Office Hours. Catch the TV show streaming on Apple. I was at Newark Airport. Office Hours was playing at the gates and the bars in the airport as well. So I got to see Blaine's face again at the airport, which was really nice. I'm surprised I haven't run into him in person, but at least I get to see him digitally. It would look a deep fake. It was nice. But more importantly, we got a lot going on. I'm going to be in Boca Raton today at the Rick Macy Tennis Academy. Come and join me and Rick Macy, the world famous Hall of Fame tennis coach, Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Roderick, Capriati, the greatest tennis coach in the world. Come and check him out from King Richard, the movie. And then tomorrow, I'll be in Miami at Aspire. So we got everyone from Kevin O'Leary to A-Rod. We have Goggins, Gary Vee, and we're doing an Ask Me Anything at lunch and a VIP dinner. So come and join after Gary's keynote, a VIP dinner right there in Miami. And on to next week, SoFi Stadium Mastermind. First we have a VIP dinner in Newport Beach, then the SoFi Stadium Mastermind, back to New York. But more not up there is today, 10 a.m. Pacific time, pre-sale for the collab. So it'll be Dane Cook and myself at Theater. Grab your tickets through Ticketmaster and come and see You Will Laugh Louder and Think Bigger with the collab. Dane and I, we're going to have a ton of special guests, Marshall Falk and Baron Davis. Hopefully Blaine Bartlett and others will be there with me at YouTube Theater and off our tour, the collab, Dane Cook and Dave Meltzer. Laugh louder, think bigger. It is a comedy that will change your mindset. I guarantee it. Philosophy and humor are a great combo, 1-2 punch. Most importantly, everyone, be more interested than interesting. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. We'll see you later. Have a great day.